So what we were talking about today is entitlement in business. Hey, Julie. Hey, Laura. Thank you guys for being here. I have so much to say about this topic. I feel like it is one of those things that I feel like everybody is kind of like feeling or like talking about behind the scenes in the industry, or like kind of like has their own thoughts around, but isn't getting talked about that much. And so I just kind of wanted to like open the forum to talk about it and discuss it a little bit. Hey, Terry, thanks for being here. Hey, Michelle. And I also feel like I have interesting perspective on it because I've been in this industry for going on 8 years. And I've just seen that evolve so much. And so I think it's really important to talk about that. And I definitely want to talk about it both from like a perspective of like, how are we operating as business owners? But I think also what can we do with clients, or how can we look at this with clients in this regard too? Because I know that can be frustrating as well. Hey, Lucy. So that is what we're going to dive into today. I know this can feel kind of like wee bit negative of a topic. I think that's what I said in my my email. And I really do not want this to be it. I don't want this to be like a hating on the industry thing. I think it's an important conversation. I think it's relevant. And what I really want it to be is more of like a, how did we get here and what do we do about it thing? Because there are always those things in any industry. How do we get here and what do we do about it? So this happens to be ours in this moment, in this conversation. And so that's how we are going to look at it. Cool. Hey, Shantae, thanks for being here. Before we get started, I just have to show you guys something because I just need to show someone other than me. Look at how cute my nails are. I never get wild, but they're ghosts. Can you even? I can't. I never ever do anything crazy. And Sarah did ghosts. So I decided I was doing ghosts, and I'm just so thrilled with them. I can't even begin to tell you. So anyway, that is that. Thanks for witnessing me. Now I'm going to shut the live stream off because that was all I needed. Kidding. Oh yeah, you guys love them. Okay, the overalls, I could not recommend more, Shannon. They're from Free People, but I think they're We the Free, if that makes sense. Like the brand is We the Free, but you get them at like through Free People. Should have done bats. Sabrina, I have enough bats in my life thanks to you. So yes. Sabrina has gotten my child obsessed with bats, and it's like all he wants to do is carry on a bat stuffed animal and wear bat pajamas, and that's all he wants to do for Halloween, not something cute and cozy and adorable. And anyway, so ghosts it is, not bats. Okay, so much to say here. What I just heard was that I need to go get my nails done. Cute. Yes. You did get him his favorite toy. This is true. Okay. In all seriousness, entitlement. Oh my gosh. I think that there is an entitlement epidemic in our industry, which is like maybe a big statement, but it's true, in my opinion. I think so many people feel like they are entitled to really big results without having to put forth a lot of exchange for that to happen. And I think that some of it is coming from a negative place. And I think also some of it is coming from a confused and misinformed place. I do not think most of it is like because we have an industry full of entitled assholes. I really don't. I think most of it is because we've had a lot of messaging in our industry that really confuses people and makes them get in this entitled space that is probably not serving them and is not actually like true to them in their heart. It's just like the messaging seeps in, right? That he holds a bat in April. You don't, I personally don't love that as much as you do. Taking him around the ball with a bat in April, but to each his own. It's vibing right now, obviously, because it's October, but otherwise it's a little weird. But yeah, so Stabs got him a bat stuffed animal when he was like 6 months old, and he loves it. And one of his first words was bat. He carries this fucking thing around, and it's like super cute right now, but it's like different when you're like the kid with a bat in April. Anyway, totally loving and supporting him for who he is, though. Okay, so entitlement, meaning let's define entitlement epidemic for a second. I think a lot of people feel like the results should be coming to them and without a lot of effort, and that they're kind of like entitled to have the result instead of, and I'm not saying like the exchange for the result is work hard. Do you know what I mean? But like there is an exchange of like value, right? So I think that's where the entitlement thing is coming in, is that like it feels like I shouldn't have to give so much value, but I should be getting so much back in return. And again, that doesn't have to look like you're hustling it out or working your ass off, but like at the end of the day, like the exchange is monetary for value. And I think we have to recognize that, right? And sounds like Sabrina, oh my God, your brother did that, Kate. That makes me feel better. Lucy said, this is reminding me of a video I saw with a little girl who wanted to be a pink chair for Halloween. Oh my God, that's so cute. I love that. So with that being said, how did that happen? I think is an important conversation. Like, how did we get here? What has happened? What has kind of like influenced this trajectory? I want to share that because I feel like sometimes it's easy to like eye roll shit in our industry. It's like, oh, people are entitled, eye roll. And I think it's really like, let's understand that so we can really figure out how to address it, how to help, how to make this industry what we want it to be ultimately, you know? So when I started almost 8 years ago, the industry was so rigid, I would say, if that makes sense. Like it was like, there is a right way to do things. There is like, you have to go in this order. There are these 3 steps. It was so rigid. And I think it felt like so much work was required. Like you had to have perfect branding and perfect pictures. And it felt like, you know, like there was a right way and there was like a lot of exchange involved. Now, the flip side of that was like, obviously a lot of other things were easier in terms of like, you know, Reels wasn't a thing, TikTok wasn't a thing, video wasn't a thing so much. So like you almost could pour more into those things like your email sequence, etc. But it was definitely a lot more of like, there is a right way, there is a thing, you must get these things perfect, you know? And so I think the messaging of like letting it be easy that kind of started to come out of some of that was really fucking important. Like I personally think the let it be easy messaging has really good intentions and is really important in many ways, because what it really was like a pushback to this idea that like it had to be so hard and it had to be so perfect. And like, you know, I think a pushback to the idea that you couldn't kind of like show up and build a relationship and like, you know, kind of do business in a simple way that served you. And so at its core, I think that message of like letting it be easy and, you know, creating more ease in your business is one that truly, truly mattered. I think so many people were like hustling it out, burning out. And that really like opened the industry in a new way to be like, oh yeah, like what if it was easier than this? What if I didn't have to like brand every challenge perfectly? What if I didn't have to like, you know, show up perfectly? What if my email sequences just weren't quite perfect, but I was an amazing coach? Like that did so much for so many people that I think was really important. I'll share more there, but I want to see what Terry said. Terry said, I think it's so easy to see how much value we're actually putting out, but how much money we're making. Although it's so easy to see how much value we're putting out and how much money we're actually making. Although there are other mindset things that can block the money. But if you want 3K of money every month, you better bet your butt you need to be at the very minimum putting out 3K worth of value. Love this topic. Yeah. Margaret Lynch, she does tapping and she has this like amazing thing that I've like always really, really taken to heart, where she talks about like, if you want to make an extra 50K this year in your business, like what you should be focused on, what you should be tapping on, all of that is, how do I put 50K of value out into the world? And I think that's exactly what you're saying, Terry, which I think is really, really relevant to this. Yeah, and there's a clear difference between easy and easeful. I see that as confusion sometimes. Totally agree. I couldn't agree more. I always say there's a difference between ease and easy, right? But everything in general, I think that message started out to be matters. Like I think that messaging of like ease versus easy and all of that is so relevant and important. I think especially to so many women who are, used to kind of being willing to put themselves in burnout or work way harder than they have to, or like be perfectionists and care about pleasing everyone else in all of these ways that do not serve them. Like that message is so fucking important. And I think what happened is it got really manipulated and got used in a way that was not just trying to like tell you the truth of like things can be easier for you, but really ended up kind of like swinging so far over here where it was selling you like a dream that wasn't even real. Like basically like you shouldn't have to do shit and you should be making loads of money. And if you don't, it's your energy. And that's the problem, you know? So I think that then what became kind of like the gold standard in our industry wasn't like how perfect your email sequence was or how perfect your branding pictures were. It was like how much you didn't have to do. So then like all of the messaging was about like, well, I'm winning because I'm making X and only working Y, or I'm winning because I never have to do a sales call, or I'm better because I don't have to do these 52 things in my business, right? And I think that messaging got really manipulated and used to make a case that like you're doing it wrong if you have to show up and give value, if you have to get on a sales call, if you have to work more than 10 hours a week or whatever, right? It like became this kind of like pedestal-y sort of thing of like only the cool people, you know how to do this without having to put any effort in. And it's super hard because in so many ways that's so attractive to us, right? Like the idea that I shouldn't have to get on a sales call because actually sales calls really scare me, or like I would only have to work 10 hours a week. Well, that sounds amazing because I have like a small child, like, right? Like all of that makes sense, like it's really like just from a human perspective and from a brain perspective, like of course that sounds fucking awesome, right? And so that's cool, but it also gets manipulated. Do you know what I mean? Because then it becomes about like some intangible thing that no one can quite conceptualize, but everyone can sell you. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, we can't quite conceptualize it in the way we can conceptualize, like, here's a perfect email sequence. You know what I'm saying? So it becomes this sort of intangible of like, I know how to work 2 hours a week and make $1 million. It's my energy, come play. And like, there's not really a lot behind that, except the reason it's selling isn't, in my opinion, the energy. It's because that's a really fucking attractive message. Do you know what I mean? Let me see what you guys have to say, and I have more to say there. Shantae said, yeah, I agree. When in fact, those examples, those people did have to do them at one point. Yep. Lucy said, I still feel like this, like that I'm winning by working 2 hours this week and make 100K when there's so much that goes into the behind the scenes of those circumstances, wins like team or length of time building up to that, et cetera. Yeah, totally. Shantae said, it's like, don't measure your lack of results yet based on their season of business of no longer having to do those things. Right, for sure. I really think so much goes into that. One is like, right, they probably were doing them for a long time. 2, they're maybe not being honest about the fact that they were doing it for a long time. Or 3, they're saying, well, my energy shifted and then I didn't have to do sales calls. But what really is true is they've just been in business for 7 years or something like that, right? Like, I'm not saying you don't make a mindset or an energetic shift around that. I'm just saying like, there's almost always more to that story. And I think just being honest about that is key. Like, I don't do sales calls anymore at all. And I'm so pro sales calls because doing them is what got my business this successful. You know what I mean? Got me to a place where I don't have to do them. And I don't even not do them because like I couldn't or I don't want to. It just like isn't the model right now, Sab said, I always try to remind this to my clients on group calls. Like, sure, I might be working 10 hours a week, but the business isn't working 10 hours a week. The business is probably doing 100 hours a week, depending on what's going on. And I had to put in those thousands of hours and the cost of team together, 100%. Like, your business always has to be working. You don't always have to be working, but your business does. So if you do not yet have the resource of money to pay team to be working that, like, it is going to have to be you. But I think that that's what's so confusing to people is they feel like they are entitled to the 10 hours a week without having to put the other resources in, whether that's that initial time or the cost and money associated with that. And so what happens is they're just super fucking frustrated. So they're buying into this messaging of like, you shouldn't have to do all these things. And if you do, you're getting it wrong. right? Or they're buying into, there's a magic secret that I can teach. Well, both really. There's a magic secret I can teach you about this that has nothing to do with those things. And the truth is, it always has to do with those things, right? Yep, exactly. Express what I was trying to communicate. Okay, good. Sab says right. But then it's the trade-off of I will work less, but there's a cost of team and nobody wants that trade-off. Exactly. I think that's so true. Like if you work less, your margins just look different. Like I have some clients who are maybe, their profit is 80%. And I have some clients who it's maybe even 40% because they have chosen to work as little as possible. And like, that's okay. Right. But like, it's still an exchange, it's still real and relevant. And there's still a trade-off there. And I think the idea that you should have those results without a trade-off is where people get so entitled and quite honestly, so fucking frustrated. And I think it's where as coaches, we get really frustrated because clients are kind of coming to us being like, I want to work 10 hours a week. I want to make 50K months. And I don't really want to run team. I don't want to pay for team. And I don't want to invest before I'm ready. Like, what? And if you're not like really seasoned at this, it's easy to feel like as a coach, you're supposed to have the answer to that instead of being able to push back and be like, yo, no, like, where are the resources you're putting in? Where is the value you're putting in? Where is the exchange that's coming from that? But, like it can be hard to have that conversation. I think it can especially be hard to have that conversation when it feels like, well, I should know this because apparently all these other coaches in our industry are doing that. And in my opinion, all these other coaches in the industry have just figured out that message fucking sells. You know what I'm saying? Sab said, I like how all these magic, oh shit, I lost it. Sabs, I like how all these magic secrets, and then I lost it. Can you put that again? I think another piece of this is the all or nothing belief too. I don't think it always has to be one way or another. There is always a balance and money will always be the exchange of value, and value does take effort for sure. Totally. Hey, Jess, welcome. But the good news is the compound effect will happen if you keep going. Yep, every time. Oh, Sam said, I like how all these magic secrets either cost $197 or 100,000. Totally. But like, that's how it's just marketing, right? But I think it's so hard because when you're out there and like, let's just use this as an example. Say you're someone who finds sales calls to be quite uncomfortable. So you're out there and you hear all this stuff of like, you shouldn't have to do sales calls. I don't do sales calls and I still make 100K months. And then you go to your coach and you're like, I don't want to do sales calls and I want to make 100K month. And if they don't feel like they can tell you how to do that, or that doesn't happen quickly, like it's easy to get really frustrated in that because it's like, well, there is supposed to be a secret. Other people are doing it. And what we're often missing is the way that they're doing it is that message is just really attractive. It's not necessarily that there's just like this perfect thing or this one find or this one system. It's like they just have a message that's so fucking attractive to our human brains. And to be honest, sometimes it's like, do you want to share a message like that or not? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, can you back yourself in that message? And the truth is a lot of people that have that message don't care if they can back themselves in that message is, the real truth. And I think that's what's creating such a problem in our industry because it's making a lot of people mistrust coaches, but it's also creating a lot of like issue in terms of like mindset and willingness in people because they feel like doing those things would be wrong, but they don't know what else to do instead because what else is getting sold is like codes or energy or whatever. And so they kind of don't know what to do. They're like, well, I'm not supposed to do all these things. I'm not supposed to show up more than I want to. I'm not supposed to do sales calls. I'm not supposed to work more than 15 hours a week. And I'm supposed to kind of work on my energy. And I don't know what else to do. So of course I'm going to keep buying all these fucking $197 things like Sab says on codes because I want to do something. Like most of us are motivated. We want to do something. We want to solve the problem. We want to figure it out. Right. But if I feel like I can't do all this and all this comes off the table as my way to figure it out, and the way to figure it out is this, then of course I'm going to have to keep buying this code shit because like, one, that seems a lot easier to my brain. Wouldn't that be great? And two, like what else would I do? Because I'm not supposed to do all these other things. And so I think what's really helpful to see there is like, yes, I think we have an entitlement epidemic, but I think it has so much to do with like a lot of the messaging that got put out there. I don't think it's just true that like across the board, all of these entrepreneurs are out here and they don't want to do fucking shit. You know what I mean? Like, I think most of us that are entrepreneurs and got into this because we do want to show up and we do want to serve and we do want to have an amazing business. And you might have boundaries around that, around how much you're willing to show up or how much you're willing to work. But the point is like, most people that get into this don't get into this because they just have no desire to do anything. I think they get into this and then they get really, really, really confused by all that messaging. And it creates this frustration. It creates this entitlement. So I think that that's really something that if we all have perspective on, we get to like change in this space, is the conversation around that like, yes, these things do take work. No, it's probably not magic. It's probably really, really, really attractive messaging. Yes, you probably will have to do sales calls at a certain point in your business until you don't, and both are okay. Neither is better or worse. Like one doesn't get a pedestal over the other, you know? I wrote a post recently about all the things I like didn't do to make $1 million in my business. And the thing I said on it is like, yes, I didn't do these things, but don't confuse that with doing nothing, right? Like the things I didn't do were like group programs, sharing a ton of my life on social, et cetera, et cetera. But in place of those, I did plenty of other things, right? Like I show up one-on-one, I give a shit ton of value. I show up probably more than most people in a consistent fashion. Like it's not like I didn't do these things, so I had to do nothing. It's like I didn't do these things, so I did other things in place of that. So if what you absolutely hate more than anything on planet Earth is sales calls, fine, don't fucking do them. But what are you doing in place of them is the conversation, right? Like, are you gonna can someone contact you via Voxer? Can you have a chat that way? Like it's not nothing. It's not just like, well, I don't do sales calls, period. How do you make the sale? Like these are the things we have to think about. It's not, I just never have to do these things. It's what else am I doing in place of them, or what's the trade-off associated with it? So it's kind of like the trade-off we were talking about with ads earlier. It's like, I don't do, 100-hour weeks, but what I do in place of that is pay a team to do 100-hour weeks, right? Like there is always something in place of it. Lucy said, even though you don't do group programs, you pour a lot into building community. 100%, right? Like, I think that that's so important to say is like, yes, it can be cool that I didn't have to do those things. And I think it's important to share that because if someone else doesn't want to do those things, it can be really helpful to be like, oh, cool. Okay, I see that someone else didn't do that. That's super helpful for me. But again, I think like where the message stops is just with what people aren't doing instead of what they're doing instead, right? Like all these people that are talking about how they don't do any of these things, they're doing a lot of things instead. Like those same people that are saying that are probably on Instagram stories like 500 times a day. Like that's okay. If that feels better to you, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, there's still a thing there, right? Shannon said, I got into a weird spot like 2 years ago with my business where I felt that there was something wrong with me or my business because I did work more than 10 hours a week. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I think so many people feel like that. Like, I think there's almost like a shame around it. It's crazy to me, but it's so pervasive where it's like, oh my gosh, if I'm like working now, or is someone judging me? Like the ultimate like pedestal thing of this is that we don't work. But it's so ironic because then the other issue in our industry is all of these complaints about not getting results, not feeling supported by coaches, et cetera. And it's like, how do you want this to work? Because you like want to not have to work more than 10 hours, but you like want to feel really supported by your coach. Like, how does that all live together without, again, something else, some other trade-off, some other thing coming in? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, these are the most obvious issues in our industry is the giving great coaching experience and helping people get results and like not working a ton. Like, you know what I mean? It's like so funny how those are so intertwined. Right. And they pay a closer and then trade off as a commission. Oh, they pay a closer and then trade off as commission. Exactly. Totally, Sabs. Jess said, or you do sales calls enough to be able to answer the questions they have before a call, but you missed the step you took to have that knowledge. Yeah, for sure. Shannon said, yeah, how do y'all want this to work? My thoughts exactly. So I think that's really important. Like for me, you guys know, like obviously like one of my highest values is like one-on-one and my clients feeling like they have a partner in their business and like super deeply supported. A trade-off of that is that I definitely work more than 10 hours a week. Right. I would say it used to be more than that. Now it's probably more like 30 to 35 because I have been in, I only have childcare 30 hours a week. But like, it's still a thing. It's still not 10. And like, we don't have to apologize for that. And again, someone can work 10. It's just going to look like other things that often don't get talked about. And so the point I want to make in all of this too, is that this is where I think so many people get frustrated and entitled, is because they see all of this messaging of like, I should be able to have a successful business doing absolutely none of these things and just working 10 hours a week. And like, I feel so entitled to that because that's what I keep hearing. But I think those same people also feel wildly frustrated because they don't know what to do to get it, besides like continue to buy the codes and stuff, instead of realizing like at the end of the day, your business is going to be successful if you can solve a problem for people, right? Like, let me say that again. Your business is going to be long-term sustainable and successful if you can solve a problem for people. Of course, on the front end, you can make a lot of money with a really, really sexy message. Like I could come out with a message next week, like, I cracked the code on how to ensure all of your clients go to 7 figures, buy my product. Of course that would sell, like duh, of course that would sell. And I could ride that for a while until that everyone realized that actually didn't solve that problem for people. And then it wouldn't be sustainable, but it would work enough for long enough that I could probably make a lot of money off that. It's just like, is that the business I want to have? Is that the model I want? No, so I think it's just important to see these things. Like this messaging is creating all of this frustration and entitlement. And also it's not sustainable. It's like, it's going to die just like all of that stuff I talked about at the beginning when I started almost 8 years ago died, of like all so rigid and it had to be perfect. Like it's always going to pendulum, but like that stuff works for a while. It really does. And so I think that like we just all have to start being a lot more honest about what it takes and how much we work. Like another thing that I don't think people are honest about in terms of this is a lot of people will say how many hours they're working a week, and what they actually are counting is how much they're on client calls. So they're like, oh, I only work 7 hours a week or something like that. And I'm like, what you mean is you're on client calls 7 hours a week. You are still creating content. You are still showing up on Instagram in stories constantly. You are still answering your clients. You're still interfacing with your team. Like all of that also counts as work. And it's amazing if it doesn't feel like work. Like I have some clients that show up all the fucking time on social, and to them, it like barely registers as work, which is fantastic. Like we want business to feel like that. But I think like for the general population, when they hear a message, like I'm only working 7 hours a week, it gets massively confusing because they're like, how could I possibly do my business like that? Like what? And it's like, nobody's doing their business like that unless their team is running their entire business, which is totally okay, right? That's totally viable. It just has a cost associated with it. Or they're being cute about how they're counting those hours. So again, I think that this creates the entitlement because it's like, well, this person is making $1 million and they're only working 7 hours a week. Like that's what I want. I don't want to do anything besides that. And it's like, we're just not having full context there. So my like solution, I don't know what you're going to call it here, is I think like if we can just all be more honest about this and have more clarity around what is true behind the scenes of all of this, I think this message, this entitlement goes away in our industry very quickly. Like, I don't think we have a community and an industry full of people that don't want to show up. Like I was saying earlier, I think we have a community and an industry full of people who have been very confused by a lot of really manipulative marketing messaging. where the dream is kind of getting sold in a way that is not real and true. And so when we can talk about how it can still feel like the dream and there's exchange there, I think it gets better for everyone. Hey, Adrienne, she said, exactly. All of these people saying I work X hours, they make X dollars with no context and letting people assume correctly or incorrectly what it means. And then people feel like crap about what they're doing. Totally. And I think it creates such a difficult place for a lot of coaches too, because they have clients coming to them having this expectation or like sending them posts of like, look at this person making X, doing Y, help me get there. And it's like, it's not like we can't have a goal. It's not like we can't work toward that. It's not like we can't shoot for that, but also like, can we be realistic about what that takes and what the trade-offs are there? And I really think that like, that's the brave conversation that we have to have as coaches sometimes. Like one of my clients recently was like, yeah, but like so-and-so just sells one course and has an ads funnel and makes X. And I was like, right on. Let's calculate that out. How much would a lead cost? How many leads would you have to get per month? How much would that cost you? How much would that cost you in management? How much would that cost you in team? Let's play this, like, let's math the math on this whole thing. And when we math the math, she was like, fuck that. I don't want to do that. That sounds way worse than what I'm doing. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like for someone else, that might not be way worse. Like that might be totally a good trade-off for them. But for you, that might not be, but like there's still reality behind all of this. There's still math, there's still expenses, there's still dollars spent. So I think that, you know, being able to have those conversations as coach is also really important. Because if you're not, then you are going to have friction with your clients because you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to try to support you to work 7 hours a week and like not have a team and make 100K. And you both are going to be fucking frustrated in that, you know? So I think being able to balance the like, yes, of course, let's go for your big dream. And then also let's like think about the real business realities behind that is, well, how do I want to say it? It's not only important as a coach, it's like really like to me, like the ethical and responsible thing to do, where we're not kind of pretending that there is some way to hack all of this from the beginning where you like never have to do a sales call, never have to do anything, never have to invest, never have to spend. Like this is not business, unfortunately. And I feel like, you know, it just has gotten taken so far to where I think we're, you know, gosh, like I think about this all the time, but like we're such a lucky generation. Like I truly think about this every day. Like the fact that I can work from home, see my son all day, do work that I love, like have my own business. I mean, we are literally the first generation of women that this was possible for. Like that is so exceptional. It like makes me want to cry every time I think about it. You know, I think about my mom's family, that whole side of her family are like big entrepreneurs. And my grandfather owned several companies, and that was not his reality in any way, shape, or form. Like he put a lot on the line for those. He worked his ass off for those. He was gone from his family and his children a lot to build what he built. And the fact that we can do this like from our home, from our computer, I just like cannot get over how lucky we are as a generation in terms of that. And like we just moved the needle so far. Do you know what I mean? We're like, yes, we should be able to do that, but also we should have to do it without working. And also we should have to do it without actually having to exchange value or actually having to serve clients or any of these things. Do you know what I mean? Like I should be able to like be a coach without actually having to coach and make millions. No, just no. I don't know how else to say that except no. So I think that that's really helpful to see is that like, I think it just got it's gotten a little manipulated, right? We're like, we are so exceptionally lucky, and doesn't mean nothing is required. Like is less required than maybe it's ever been. Are we more lucky in the way we can do that online and the flexibility we have and all of that? Oh my gosh, of course, right? And also it doesn't mean nothing. So I think that's super important too. So I just wanted to level set and say, like, if you're an entrepreneur that has to show up and work in your business, you are not getting it wrong. If you're an entrepreneur who's working more than 10 hours a week, you are not getting it wrong. If you're someone who is working 10 hours a week, but your profit margins take a hit because of that, you are not getting it wrong. Like, these are normal things in business. And the more we can normalize them, the more the entitlement goes away and the less everyone's making themselves wrong for these things, right? And quite honestly, the more it benefits our industry as a whole, because that trust fracture that we're experiencing is because of that. Like, hands down, that's why that trust fracture is there, is because people are buying into programs that say they're going to help you work 10 hours a week and make all this money, and then they're not delivering because they're trying to only work 10 hours a week. Like, duh, this is why this is happening, you know? And there are solutions to that. We have to make ourselves right for how we show up, for what it looks like for us, for what our boundaries are, and realize that, like, at the end of the day, our business is built to solve a problem, and being able to solve that problem is the most critical thing. Like, if it takes you 40 hours a week to solve that problem, or it takes you 20, like, solving the problem is what creates sustainability. Solving the problem is what keeps your lights on. It's what keeps you in business. It's what keeps you making money. And so, yes, you can get away with not solving the problem for long enough if you have a sexy enough message. But again, that always falls apart. It really, really does. So I wanted to share on all that and level set on all that, because I think that we all don't hear that enough. And I think we really need to move away from the pedestal that is work X amount of hours, make X amount. And again, I'm not even saying don't share the amount of hours you work or don't share the money. It's not that. It's don't share it as though it's some magic secret. Let's share the context behind it. Like Sabs was saying, like, she can work 10 hours a week now because she pays a team to work the other 90 or whatever. Like, that's the secret behind it. It's not some other code or something, you know what I mean? Of course, there are things we can all do, like automation, like team, like systems, like structure. Let's talk about those all the time. But the idea that there is some magical thing that prevents you from having to do anything hard in entrepreneurship, that prevents you from having to show up in any way. Like, another example of this entitlement thing that always gets me so fucking much is around, like, having perfect clients. Like, the entitlement of, like, I should never have a client that has challenges, or like, I should only have these, like, perfect dream clients. That one always kills me too, because I think it makes people make every client they have so wrong, right? Or every challenge that comes with it wrong. And the truth is, like, you don't have a job unless your clients have challenges. So we can't make that wrong either. And, you know, same thing here. I use the amount of hours you work as a week as the example, but I think, like, having perfect clients, et cetera, is a great example too. Like, we have jobs because we have to solve problems, which inherently means our clients have problems, which inherently means, like, they are going to expect some support in solving it. And I think this idea of, like, only attract a client who's, like, fully self-responsible, has no problems, can handle it all on their own, and will pay you a ton of money is such bullshit. And again, it makes people so entitled. So when their client comes to them and is, like, having a meltdown, they're like, I should not have to deal with clients like this. And it's like, but isn't that, like, the essence of the exchange of value here? Is they have a challenge and the exchange is helping them work through it. Of course, you can have boundaries there around how someone shows up, how they treat you, how much pressure they put on you to solve it for them, all of that. But it's so different. So all of this to say, most of us are not getting it wrong. Being able to just show up, do the work, do the thing in your business in the way that feels good to you, in a way that solves a problem, in the way that creates value exchange is really, like, most of the secret. And where most people are getting derailed is thinking that there's some other secret that's going to absolve them of any of these challenges, of having to show up, of having to work, of having to give value. And it doesn't mean they're bad people. Like, that's attractive to all of us. That's super attractive messaging. So I think it's just about, is our messaging authentic and real and, you know, showing what's true. As coaches, are we willing to call out that hard conversation or have that hard conversation and say, hey, let's do the math on this? Or like, hey, cool, you're not going to do sales calls. What are you going to do instead? That kind of thing, right? And how can we stop putting that pressure on ourselves? Because when that pressure is on, you are backed into a corner because you can't solve it through showing up, but you also probably don't know how to just solve it through energetics because there's always more to business than that. And so you're in this corner that you can't get out of, or you're giving all your money to these, like perceived codes or solutions. And it's so damaging because what most of us want to feel is empowered. What most of us want to feel is like we have the ability to solve a problem. And so when we can really get back into our power around that, like, okay, I feel really powerful because I actually am going to put in another 10 hours a week right now. Like I have a client, right, who typically works about 20 hours a week, but she has these really big projects she wants to push forward right now. And I said to her recently, like, you kind of have two options here. Either you're going to pay other people to push these forward, or you're going to put in more hours right now. But like trying to make yourself insane, thinking you have to like move this gigantic project forward while still only working 20 hours a week is going to make you feel terrible. So like she gets to pick, and she's really been like, honestly, it really wouldn't feel bad to work 10 more hours a week if I got through these by the end of the year. I'm like, cool, right on. That's so empowering, right? Does she want to do that forever? Of course not. Is she going to do it if she absolutely can't? Of course not, right? But like being able to just go, yeah, there's nothing wrong with putting 10 extra hours in if that's what feels good to me and gets me what I want to have in my business is so valuable and important. Feeling like, oh, I couldn't possibly, but I'm still supposed to finish this project and get all of these results, but I can't work more than that because like I'm not supposed to be a good business owner. No, that helps absolutely freaking no one. So I hope this was helpful. I know this is not like the most positive conversation we've ever had, but I do think it's illuminating to share about these things. And I think that the positive it does for all of us is lets us be less hard on ourselves, let us set more realistic expectations, and remind us that like these are not like these ideals are not things we have to subscribe to. It kind of reminds me of like almost like, like holding yourself up to the standard of like a photoshopped model on a magazine. It's like there's always more to that story, and there's always a lot that's not getting shared, or there's always a lot of photoshopping to make that happen. And so it's like comparing your real self and real experience to that is always harmful. And I think that's a bit of what is happening in our industry right now. So I hope that helps. I hope that's supportive. I hope it gives perspective. Hope it helps in terms of how you support your clients and how you support yourself. And ultimately, I think if this message shifts a bit, our industry will shift too. And I think people will be much happier in our industry, but I think they'll also be much happier with their coaches, right? Because they're not going into programs expecting the impossible or expecting in year one, what actually would probably happen in year 7 is really maybe the better way to say it, right? It's not like ever impossible, but it's like, I'm expecting at this juncture results that would come from the compound effect of being at this juncture. And so I think that's why so many people get unhappy with programs and coaches in our industry. And so I think if we can talk about all this more, set more realistic expectations, we can solve for that, and that trust can come back in a big way. So thank you for listening to my rant. I appreciate you all so much for being here. If you have things to contribute to this conversation, I would love to hear them, because I think the more we can all give perspective on this, the more this gets normalized. So by all means, please share thoughts, perspective, experiences. I think that's so helpful. Whether you're live or watching the replay, I would love to hear that from you guys. So I hope you have a beautiful week, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye, guys.